At the first family dinner after I came back from law school, I showed up pregnant. Before I could say a word, my father raised his voice. "You're a disgrace. Not welcome here. You're no longer part of this family. Get out now." "Well, let's go. My name is Hollis and I'm 24 years old. I grew up in a small town in Redmond Springs, Ohio with my parents and my older sister Marceline. My childhood was normal, I guess. My dad worked for Fairfield Manufacturing Group, a big company that basically kept our town alive. My mom stayed home and spent most of her time worrying about what the neighbors thought. Marceline was always the perfect daughter, the one who did everything right. Got married young to a local guy, stayed close to home. I was different. I wanted more. I worked my ass off in high school, got perfect grades, did every extracurricular activity I could squeeze into my schedule. When I got into Warrenton Law School, my parents acted proud for about 5 minutes before my dad started complaining about the cost, and my mom started asking when I'd find a husband. They didn't get it. They didn't understand why I wanted to leave our town, why a law degree mattered to me. But I went anyway. Warrenton was terrifying at first. Everyone seemed smarter, richer, more competent than me. I felt like a fraud walking around campus in my Target clothes while other students wore designer everything. The workload was crushing. I spent my first semester barely sleeping, drowning in casebooks and outlines, convinced I'd fail out. That's when I met Jackson Fairborn. It was October of our first year. I was in the library at 2 o'clock in the morning crying over a contracts assignment I couldn't understand. He sat down across from me and said he was from Ohio too. I recognized his last name immediately. His father, Leon Fairborn, owned the company where my dad worked. Jackson was tall, had dark hair and kind eyes, and he didn't act like the rich kid he was. We started studying together. He explained concepts I struggled with, and I helped him with writing assignments. We'd grab coffee between classes, complain about professors, talk about how much we missed home, even though we'd both wanted to escape. By December we were inseparable. By January we were dating. Jackson wanted to tell people right away. He wanted to hold my hand on campus, take me to dinners, introduce me to his friends. But I said no. I made him keep it a secret. He didn't understand at first, got hurt, thought I was ashamed of him. That wasn't it at all. I knew my father. If he found out I was dating Leon Fairborn's son, one of two things would happen. Either he'd accuse me of being a gold digger, of using Jackson to get ahead, of sleeping my way into a rich family, or worse, he'd try to use our relationship to advance his own career, to get promotions and raises by leveraging his daughter's connection to the boss's son. Both options made me sick, so we kept it quiet. For 3 years of undergrad and 3 years of law school, Jackson and I were together, but nobody knew. It was hard. We couldn't go to parties as a couple. When friends asked if we were dating, we laughed it off. When we went home for holidays, we arrived separately at different times. If we ran into each other in town, we'd say hi like acquaintances who happened to be from the same place and nothing more. My parents never suspected anything. They barely asked about my life at school anyway. When I came home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, my mom would spend the whole time asking when I'd find a boyfriend, telling me I was getting too old, saying my biological clock was ticking. My dad would grunt about tuition costs and ask if I really needed such an expensive education. Marceline would smile sympathetically but never defend me. Jackson's parents were different. Leon and Maribel were warm, curious, actually interested in their son's life. But Jackson respected my wishes. He never told them about us either, even though it killed him to keep secrets from his family. We planned it all out. We'd graduate. I'd get a job at a top firm. Prove I could make it on my own merits. Then we'd tell everyone. We'd get engaged, get married. And nobody could say I'd used Jackson for anything because I'd already succeeded by myself. But life had other plans. In January of our final semester, I started feeling sick. Thought it was stress. Law school finals were brutal, and we were all studying for the bar exam too. But the nausea wouldn't stop. I missed my period. Then another one. I took a pregnancy test in a CVS bathroom, then another, then 5 more. All positive. I was pregnant. 24 years old, not married, not graduated yet, and pregnant. Jackson was thrilled when I told him. He actually cried happy tears, hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe, started talking about baby names and nurseries. I was terrified. Not about having a baby with Jackson. I loved him, wanted a life with him, but about my parents finding out before I was ready. Morning sickness hit me hard. I'd throw up between classes, rush out of lectures to make it to the bathroom, survive on crackers and ginger ale. My blazers got tighter as my belly grew. I started wearing loose clothes, oversized sweaters, anything to hide what was happening to my body. Jackson wanted to tell his parents. He said they'd be happy, they'd help, they'd support us. I made him wait. I wanted to graduate first. Wanted my law degree in hand before anyone knew. But Jackson couldn't keep it from them. In March, he told his parents everything. That we'd been together for 6 years, that I was pregnant, that we were going to get married. Maribel's reaction shocked me. She was overjoyed. She started knitting baby clothes immediately. Tiny blankets and booties and hats. Leon opened a college fund for his future grandchild, depositing $70,000 into it the same day. They called me, told me they loved me, said I was already family. I cried on the phone with Maribel. She asked why I'd hidden the relationship for so long. I explained about my father, about my fears, about wanting to succeed on my own. She understood. She said they'd known something was going on since sophomore year, but respected our privacy. By graduation in May, I was 5 months pregnant. I couldn't hide it anymore. My belly pushed against even my loosest clothes. Classmates started noticing, whispering, asking questions. I deflected. Jackson wanted to come home with me to tell my parents together. Said no. This was something I had to do myself. I prepared everything. I wrote a speech. I made a presentation on my laptop with proof of my success. My Wharton law degree. My job offer from a top Boston firm starting at $175,000 a year. Photos of Jackson and me together. Our engagement ring. A 3-carat diamond that had belonged to Jackson's grandmother. I practiced in front of the mirror. I had answers ready for every question they might ask. I drove home alone on a Saturday in late May. The 6-hour drive gave me too much time to think, to worry, to imagine worst-case scenarios. But I told myself it would be fine. I was an adult. Had a good job. I was marrying a good man. My parents would be shocked, but they'd come around. I was so wrong. I got to my parents' house around 6 o'clock in the evening. My dad's truck was in the driveway. Marceline's car wasn't there, which disappointed me. I'd hoped she'd be around for moral support. My mom opened the door before I could knock. She looked older than I remembered, more tired. She hugged me quickly and said dinner would be ready in 20 minutes. She didn't comment on my loose sweater or ask how I was doing. Just went back to the kitchen. My dad was in the living room watching television. He grunted hello without looking at me. I sat down on the couch with my laptop bag, my carefully prepared presentation inside, and waited. Dinner was pot roast. We sat at the table in silence for a few minutes. Then my mom started complaining about the neighbor's dog barking at night. My dad complained about gas prices. Neither of them asked about my graduation, my plans, my life. They talked at me, not to me, like I was just another piece of furniture in the room. I pushed food around my plate. My stomach was in knots. The baby kicked, a small flutter against my ribs that reminded me why I was here. Finally I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. Both my parents looked at me, annoyed at the interruption. I said I had something important to tell them. My mom told me to sit down and finish eating. I stayed standing. That's when my dad's eyes dropped to my stomach. The sweater had ridden up slightly when I stood. There was no hiding the bump anymore. His face changed. It went red, then purple. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. He called me a disgrace. Said I'd ruined everything. Asked how I could do this to the family, to him, to our reputation in town. I tried to explain. I opened my mouth to tell them about Jackson, about the job, about the engagement. But my dad wasn't listening. He said I was just like every other stupid girl who couldn't keep her legs closed. Said I'd thrown away my education, my future, everything he'd sacrificed to send me to Warrenton. My mom sat frozen, her fork halfway to her mouth. Then she put it down carefully and said I'd made my choice. Said I'd chosen failure and she wouldn't be part of it. I said I had a job. I said I was engaged. I tried to show them the ring on my finger, but my dad knocked my hand away. He told me to get out. Said he wouldn't have a pregnant woman living under his roof. Said people would talk, would laugh at him, would think he'd raised me wrong. I looked at my mom, waited for her to say something, to defend me, to ask questions, but she just shook her head and said I could sleep on the street for all she cared. I asked if they wanted to know who the father was. My dad said it didn't matter because no decent man would claim me now. My mom said I was lying about being engaged, that I was just trying to save face. I went upstairs to my childhood bedroom. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely zip my suitcase. I threw in clothes, toiletries, the framed photo of Marceline and me from high school. I could hear my parents arguing downstairs but couldn't make out the words. When I came back down with my suitcase, my dad was waiting by the door. He opened it and stood there, arms crossed. My mom was crying at the kitchen table, but she didn't look at me. I walked out. The door slammed behind me. I heard the lock click. I sat in my car in the driveway for 10 minutes, crying so hard I couldn't see. My phone rang. It was Jackson. I didn't answer. He called again and again. Finally, I answered. I could barely speak through the sobs. He asked what happened and I told him everything. He was quiet for a moment, then said I needed to come to his dad's house. I said, no, I'd get a motel. He said, absolutely not. His father would kill him if he let me stay in a motel while pregnant. Before I could argue, my phone beeped. Another call coming in. Leon Fairborn. Answered. Leon's voice was calm and warm. He said Jackson had called him, that he knew what happened, that a driver was already on the way to pick me up. He said I wasn't staying in a motel or my car. He said I was family and family takes care of each other. I tried to say I didn't want to impose. Leon said if I tried to refuse, he'd come get me himself. The driver arrived 20 minutes later. A kind older man named Howard who worked for the Fairborn family. He took my suitcase, opened the car door for me, didn't ask questions. We drove through town to the other side where the big houses were. The Fairborn estate was at the end of a long driveway. A huge brick mansion with white columns and perfectly manicured lawns. Leon was waiting at the front door. He was tall like Jackson with graying hair and the same kind eyes. He hugged me before I could say anything. Called me his daughter. Said I was home now. I broke down again. He just held me while I cried, didn't say anything, just let me get it all out. Inside, he took me to a sitting room with a fireplace and comfortable couches. He poured me a glass of water and sat across from me. Then he asked me to tell him everything. I told him about keeping the relationship secret for 6 years, about being afraid my dad would either accuse me of gold digging or try to use the connection for his career, about planning to tell everyone after graduation, about finding out I was pregnant in January and hiding it, about preparing a whole presentation with proof of my success to show my parents, about how they never asked a single question, just saw my belly and threw me out. Leon listened to everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said my father's job at his company was safe as long as he did his work. He said he'd never hold my parents' actions against my dad professionally, but he also wouldn't tolerate any attempts to use the family connection for personal gain. He said he'd known about Jackson and me since sophomore year. Said a father knows when his son is in love. Said he'd respected our choice to keep it private, even though he'd wanted to meet me properly for years. He showed me to a guest room on the 2nd floor. It was bigger than my entire apartment near Warrenton. He told me to rest, that we'd figure everything else out tomorrow, that I was safe now. I lay in bed that night, one hand on my belly, and cried until I had no tears left. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then everything came rushing back and my stomach dropped. There was a soft knock on the door. Leon's voice asked if I was awake. I said yes, and he came in with a tray of breakfast. Toast, fruit, ginger tea for the nausea. He said Jackson and Maribel were flying in today, that they'd be here by afternoon. I spent the morning in my room trying to process everything. My phone kept buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored all of them. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I heard voices downstairs. Jackson's voice. I ran down and he grabbed me, held me so tight I couldn't breathe. Maribel was right behind him. She was petite and elegant with light blonde hair and warm brown eyes. She hugged me and said she was so sorry about my parents, that no one deserved to be treated that way. Maribel immediately started making plans. She said we needed to go shopping for maternity clothes, for baby things, for everything I'd need. I tried to say it wasn't necessary, but she waved me off. She said she'd been waiting 6 years to spoil her future daughter-in-law, and I wasn't going to stop her now. We went to the mall that afternoon. Maribel bought me an entire maternity wardrobe, comfortable dresses and soft pants and shirts that actually fit over my belly. She bought baby clothes even though we didn't know the gender yet. Tiny socks and blankets and stuffed animals. She was so excited talking about nursery colors and baby names that I started to feel excited too. That evening, my phone rang from a number I recognized. Marceline answered. She said our parents were freaking out. Someone had seen me being picked up by a Fairborn company car. Someone else had seen me at the mall with Maribel Fairborn. The whole town was talking. I asked if she knew what they did to me. She said yes, that Mom had told her I'd shown up pregnant and they'd had no choice but to ask me to leave. I almost laughed. Ask me to leave like they'd been polite about it. I told Marceline the truth. That the baby's father was Jackson Fairborn. That we'd been together for 6 years. That I'd kept it secret to protect Dad's job. That I'd had a whole presentation ready to show them my success. That they never asked a single question before throwing me out. Marceline was quiet for a long time. Then she said she believed me. Said she knew I wouldn't lie about something like this. Said she was sorry she hadn't been there. She said our parents were calling everyone they knew trying to figure out how to fix things. They'd tried to call Leon's office, but his assistant wouldn't put them through. They'd gone to their pastor and asked him to mediate. I told Marceline they couldn't fix this. That you don't get to throw your pregnant daughter out and then take it back when you find out who the father is. Over the next few days my parents tried everything. They called from different numbers. They showed up at the estate gates, but security wouldn't let them in. My dad called his supervisor at work trying to get a message to Leon. My mom called the Fairborn family's church asking the minister to intervene. Finally, Leon decided to handle it. He called me into his office and said he was arranging a dinner meeting, that my parents needed to understand this situation clearly, and this would be the only conversation we'd have with them. I didn't want to see them. Jackson said I didn't have to, but Leon said, sometimes you need to face things directly so everyone knows where they stand. The dinner was set for Saturday evening. My parents arrived exactly on time. They were dressed in their best clothes, the ones they wore to weddings and funerals. My mom's hands were shaking. My dad's jaw was tight. Maribel greeted them politely and showed them to the dining room. It was formal, with china and crystal and more forks than anyone needed. Jackson sat next to me, holding my hand under the table. Leon sat at the head. Maribel across from him. My mother couldn't stop staring at my hand, at the 3-carat diamond ring on my finger. I saw her elbow my dad and whisper something. My dad cleared his throat. Said they wanted to apologize. Said they'd reacted poorly. Said they hoped we could move past this. I asked when exactly they decided to apologize. Before or after they found out who the baby's father was. My mom started crying. Said they didn't know. Said if I just explained everything they would have understood. Jackson spoke up then. Said we'd been together for 6 years. Said Hollis had kept it secret specifically to protect my dad's reputation at work. Said she'd been planning to tell them after graduation, but found out she was pregnant. My dad said he didn't know about any relationship. Asked how he was supposed to know if I never told him. Leon's voice was cold when he spoke. He said any decent parent would have asked questions before throwing their pregnant daughter out on the street. Would have asked who the father was. Would have asked what her plans were. Would have cared about her well-being instead of just what the neighbors would say. My mom sobbed harder, said she was sorry, that she wanted to be part of the baby's life, that she wanted to fix this. I told them no. Said they wouldn't have contact with me and they wouldn't see their grandson. My mother's head snapped up. Said she had rights. Said grandparents have rights and she'd sue if she had to. I smiled then, couldn't help it. I said as a lawyer I could tell her that Ohio law requires proof of a substantial relationship between grandparent and grandchild before granting visitation rights. Since the baby wasn't born yet, there was no relationship. And even after birth, courts favor parental rights. They had no grounds for a lawsuit. My dad's face went red again. He said I was being unreasonable, that I was punishing them for one mistake. Leon interrupted. Said if my dad tried to use the family connection for personal gain at work, he'd be fired. Said if he harassed me or Jackson, he'd be fired. Said his job was safe as long as he did his work and left his daughter alone. Maribel added that when people in town asked about me, my parents should say I was a successful lawyer in Boston. Nothing more. No details about the baby, the wedding, the Fairborn family, just that their daughter was doing well in her career. My dad stood up, said this was ridiculous, that we couldn't tell him what to say about his own daughter. Leon didn't raise his voice, but his tone made my dad sit back down. He said, "Yes, we absolutely can tell you what to say, and if you don't like it, you can find a new job in a new town." The dinner ended shortly after. My parents left, my mother still crying, my dad stone-faced and silent. I watched them go and felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, just relief. Marceline texted me later that night. Said she believed me. Said she was sorry she hadn't stood up for me before. Said she'd be there if I needed her. The weeks after that dinner were strange. I kept waiting to feel guilty about cutting off my parents, but the guilt never came. Instead, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know was there. Jackson and I started planning the wedding. Nothing big, just us and the people who mattered. Leon and Maribel. Marceline, who'd called to say she'd be there no matter what. A few close friends from law school who'd figured out our secret over the years. Maribel took over wedding planning with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting years for this moment. She found a small venue, arranged flowers, helped me pick a dress that would fit over my growing belly. She never once made me feel like a burden or an imposition. Leon sat with me in his office one afternoon and we talked about the bar exam. I was taking it in July. He said his company had positions available if I wanted to stay in Ohio instead of moving to Boston. He said the choice was mine, but I'd always have options. I studied every day, my hand on my belly while I read through practice questions. The baby kicked constantly now like he was cheering me on. Jackson's excitement about becoming a father was infectious. He talked to my belly every night, read parenting books, argued with his mother about nursery colors. He made me feel like this wasn't a disaster, wasn't something to hide or be ashamed of. He made me feel like we were building something good. Marceline visited one weekend. She apologized again for not standing up for me. I told her she couldn't control our parents any more than I could. She cried and said she was going to be the best aunt, that our kid would always know he had family who loved him. My phone still rang sometimes with blocked numbers. I never answered. My parents sent letters that Leon's assistant screened. I didn't read them. The wedding was in late June, small and perfect. I wore a simple white dress and held sunflowers. Jackson cried when he saw me. Leon walked me down the aisle and whispered that he was proud of me. Maribel sobbed happy tears through the whole ceremony. We honeymooned for a weekend at a cabin 2 hours away. Nothing fancy, just us and the quiet and the knowledge that we didn't have to hide anymore. I took the bar exam in July. It was brutal. 2 days of testing while 7 months pregnant, but I got through it. Jackson brought me ice cream afterward and said I'd done great no matter what the results were. In August, we found out we were having a boy. Maribel started knitting even more aggressively. Leon added more money to the college fund. One night, lying in bed with Jackson's hand on my belly, I realized something. Real family isn't the people you're born to. It's the people who choose you, who show up when things get hard, who love you without conditions. I thought about my son growing up in this house, surrounded by Leon and Maribel's warmth, knowing he was wanted and celebrated. I thought about how he'd never have to earn basic kindness or prove his worth to receive love. I promised him, my hand over Jackson's on my stomach, that he'd always know he mattered, that he'd never doubt he was loved, that family meant people who chose to stay, not people who threw you away when you didn't meet their expectations. The baby kicked hard like he understood. I finally felt ready for whatever came next.